All right, joining me now here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is Ralph Frerichs. Ralph is the Professor Emeritus of Epidemiology at UCLA. He is the author of the new book, Deadly River, Cholera and Cover-Up in Post-Earthquake Haiti, which you can find at deadlyriver.com. Ralph, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I'm pleased to be here.
All right, so Ralph, most people know in January 2010, there was a horrific, devastating earthquake in Haiti. Estimates somewhere between 80,000 to 230,000 people were killed in the earthquake. The infrastructure they had, much of it was destroyed. Then several months after the earthquake, it actually got worse in Haiti. Tell us what exactly happened.
Well, it was unusual is because here it is. They did have this devastating earthquake that just really impacted the southern part of the country. And but then here it was. That was in January. And so then 9 months later, unrelated to the earthquake, was another devastation. This time it was a cholera outbreak that occurred in the central part of the country, more north of Port-au-Prince, where all the main damage was from the earthquake. And so actually the events are unrelated, but the devastation certainly wasn't unrelated. I mean, it had terrible impact. Both events had a terrible impact on the people of Haiti.
I'm going to ask kind of a remedial question here. Give just a quick explanation. What is cholera? Because I'm sure, most people in the West, it's like, oh, you know the word cholera, but you may not actually know what the disease is and what it actually does.
Well, sometimes you see a lot of things about cholera, and so some people think it's just an intestinal problem. Some people think it's based on a virus. You often hear about how a virus causes cholera, but that's not true. Cholera is a disease, a gastrointestinal disease. It's caused by a bacteria. And the bacteria is Vibrio cholerae, is the full name of it. And it's an organism that has about 200 different groupings in it. And all but 2 of those groupings don't cause you much trouble. But it's the 2 that we focus on that cause big problems because they produce a toxin. So if somebody ingests the Vibrio cholerae organism, the toxin gets liberated, and the next thing you know, you're having either severe vomiting or severe diarrhea. And with this dramatic fluid loss, that unless those fluids are quickly replaced, you can have a sudden death.
Yeah, and so in Haiti, with the cholera outbreak, since 2000, 9 months after the earthquake, you have, it's right now, I think the numbers are somewhere around 800,000 cases and 9,000 people have died from cholera in Haiti, and whereas cholera did not exist in Haiti essentially prior to this earthquake.
Well, as I mentioned, it's not related to the earthquake,
right.
But it certainly has a long-term devastation after the earthquake, and what you're saying is absolutely true. Here it is with the 9,000 deaths. They may even be higher. They had a group recently that published an article in which they went in and did some surveys right after the earthquake, after the cholera epidemic got underway, a few months after it got underway, and they found there was dramatic underreporting. So if we add in their figures, maybe down by 2,000 or 3,000 deaths or so, that puts it up in around the 11,000, perhaps 12,000 range, rather than the 9,000 that has been reported. And if that's the case, then the cholera epidemic, which has been the world's greatest cholera epidemic, ranks up there with the great Ebola epidemic that we just witnessed in Western Africa in many countries. While with the cholera, we're talking about only one country, Haiti, a country of about 10 million people.
So after the outbreak, you actually have, and this is kind of the main part of this book, because you actually end up befriending a scientist from France who is one of the scientists who goes to investigate why this happened in Haiti. And so you essentially have 2 competing scientific theories as to why there was this massive cholera outbreak in Haiti. So tell us, what are the 2 different theories?
The The two have simple names. One is called the environmental theory, and the other is the human activity theory. Now, the environmental theory assumes is that cholera, as I mentioned, there were a lot of water forms of cholera that don't cause trouble. And so these water forms of cholera are out there in the oceans and whatnot, in the estuaries, often in the estuaries at the edge of countries. So the assumption is that in the coastal areas of Haiti, that they were there, and then some event occurs, something happens, and they have what's called a genomic transformation, meaning that they take bits of genetic material from another Vibrio cholera, bring it back to the first Vibrio cholera, and that there's a rotation, and all of a sudden that agent becomes toxic. And that agent then, if humans come in contact with the agent, then all of a sudden an epidemic starts. So it kind of springs up from the environment, and nobody's at fault. It's like the earthquake. It's an environmental thing, and that there's no people involved that caused this transformation. So it's a theory that has a lot of appeal to those who want to say, oh, this is just a nature's accident, that it's not anything that's anybody's fault. The second theory is that one that says, no, that's not the case, that you have to have human activity. You have to have humans bring the toxigenic Vibrio cholera to a place, and they can bring it either in, they might bring it in food, they might bring it in water, they might bring it on soiled clothing, all kinds of different things, but somehow, or they bring it in their gut, when they arrive. And they bring this, and next thing you know, if the sanitary conditions aren't the best and such, is that the organism moves from one person to another, and an outbreak starts.